Hello, my name's Elizabeth Baker. I'm a storyteller. My story today is for Halloween. It's a story about a spirit. It's quite a spooky story, so a grown-up might want to watch it first and then you can decide. But if you're feeling brave, well then settle down and I'll tell you the story about the singing house. Have you ever had that feeling like somebody's whispered in your ear and when you turn, there's nobody there? Or maybe you've walked into a room or you've been outside somewhere and at first you've thought it was just the wind. But then when you've listened, you've heard a song. Well, maybe, just maybe, you've been visited by the spirit of the singing house. The singing house is far, far up in the frozen lands of the north, high on a mountain. It houses the souls of all of the ancestors. Each All Hallows Eve, the townspeople from the town at the bottom of the mountain, well, they make the journey up to the singing house to visit their ancestors. They can only go on All Hallows Eve. It's the only time the spirit will let them in. And the spirit will only welcome good people. Those who've done wicked and dreadful things, well, the spirit, she has her own way of dealing with those people. One autumn, into the town came the king. The king was not a good man. The king had gone to power through dreadful means. He had fought wars and battles and he had claimed kingdom after kingdom until he was the most powerful king from far and wide. And with that power came a badness. The king had decided that it was time for him to visit the singing house. He wanted to see the spirits of his ancestors and tell them how marvellous he was. Tell them how he had done things that they had never managed. So he came into the town and demanded to be taken up to the singing house. The townspeople were scared of the king, but they were more scared of the spirit of the singing house. Sire, they said, you must only go on All Hallows Eve. We're not welcome the rest of the time. I am king, said the king, and I have no time to waste. I demand that you take me up there now. The townspeople didn't want to take the king, but two of his men, well, they grabbed two of the men from the town and they demanded that they led the way. And soon, the king was following two of the townsmen up the mountain, through the snow that was getting deeper and deeper and a blizzard that was whirling round the mountain. As they started to reach halfway, the king stopped. At first, he thought it was the wind. He looked at his men. Did you hear that? He said. And his men, who'd heard nothing, said, no, sire, maybe it was just the wind. The townsmen, they'd heard the song. The townsmen knew only one thing sang like that, but they were too terrified to tell the king. And so they carried on up the mountain, but their hands holding the lanterns, well, they shook a little. When they got to the top of the mountain, there, coming out of the blizzard, was the singing house. The king looked at the townsman and said, open the door. The townsman said, sire, we don't have a key. Only those that the spirit wants to enter can come in. The king strode up to the door and he took his hand onto the door knocker and he rapped 3 times and the sound echoed round the mountain. And as it echoed, another sound picked it up. "Did you hear that?" said the king, and his men said, "No, sire, we just heard the echo of the door knocker." The king tried the handle, but the door was locked fast. "Open the door," he said to his men. His men threw their shoulders at the door, but it wouldn't budge, and eventually one of his men brought an axe and chopped down the door. The king strode into the singing house and stood in the cavernous hall. The two townsmen crept slowly backwards and out of the door. They knew they weren't welcome there. "Is there anybody here?" shouted the king, and his voice echoed, but no sound came back in return. The king stomped up the huge spiral staircase, and as he did, almost as a whisper, came a sound. The king looked at his men, and his men did now look quite terrified because they'd heard it too. "Is there someone there?" said the king, and as he said it, his candle and the lanterns of all of his men puffed out, almost like someone had blown it. The king stumbled forwards, and as he did, he bumped up against a figure. As he grabbed at the figure's waist, he felt material that felt almost familiar, material that belonged to a wealthy person. And as he went to grab again, it vanished. "Where are you?" said the king, and a whisper in his ear said, "I am here and there. I am there and here." The king staggered forward again, and this time he felt shoulders and the rich fur coat of someone who was clearly very wealthy. In fact, the fur coat almost felt familiar. The king could almost imagine it on his own shoulders. And as he went to grab again at the shoulders, his hands came together and the person was gone. "Where are you? Show yourself," said the king. And again the voice in his ear said, "I am here and there. I am there and here." Again the king stumbled forwards, and this time he found a head. And as he grabbed at the head, he felt a crown. The king let out a scream. The crown was the same crown that he had on his own head. The scream echoed round the singing house. The king's men fled, and all they could hear in their ears was a sound. The king was never seen again. At All Hallows Eve, the townspeople went up to the singing house to pay their respects to their ancestors. There was a skeleton. Some of the townspeople said, "Oh, that one's been here forever," but the two men who'd travelled up the mountain with the king, they knew that that skeleton was a different skeleton. On its head was a crown, and its jaw was open, almost as if it was